Thank you all for coming. All right. Well, welcome to Teaming Animal Style. So I really wanted to just share with you what I've been working on so that you can know how to participate and know what I'm up to. Because it's a lot. It's a lot of different things. I have a whole ecosystem. There we go. Now it's up at the top. Okay. So just to give you a little background on how I got here, I was always really obsessed with animals. I always knew I wanted to be a biologist, but also a writer and an artist, and I do a lot of different things. So I grew up in San Diego. I was obsessed with Jane Goodall, and really it was because of the way that she went into their world and earned their trust and respect, and they accepted her into their world. And that's, we're used to studying animals in a zoo or in a museum. And so that really struck me as a young child. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be invited into that world. So I studied redwoods. I was into plants and biogeography. I hiked the backcountry in Hawaii for 4 months with my E.O. Wilson Island Biogeography, and just generally geeked out. I was started off as really, really young age, and I include this because it's an odd story. I must have been about 4, and you might remember this movie, The White Wilderness, Disney movie, black and white. And so I saw that, and there's this one scene in there where these lemmings, for the good of their species, start jumping off this cliff. And apparently this is a regular cyclical occurrence that for the good of their species, they just dive off cliffs. And I was like 4, and I thought, how does that work? And so I took it upon myself to figure this out, specifically because I thought, what a great idea. And humans should do that too. We're overpopulated. This seems like a good idea. So I set about finding the lemming switch that would solve all our overpopulation problems. But it turns out that this is not the way that evolution works. And the film crew just threw them off the cliff for a little extra drama. So this is what started me on my career, Jane Goodall and the Lemming Switch, and so it's all a lie. However, it got me completely obsessed with social structure and social evolution, and that is what I ended up studying. So studying whales, dolphins. I was interested in the evolution of the brain and cognition, primates, human cognition, all of that stuff. I worked with Robert Trivers, Bob Trivers, who is considered the father of sociobiology and evolutionary psychology. So I was really lucky to work with him, really brilliant man. So I ended up, did my doctoral work in Ethiopia. I lived in a little tent by the river, the Awash River, which is really close to where they found Lucy's fossils. So this is really the cradle of humanity. There's tools everywhere, fossils. It's really quite dramatic. But I studied these 2 kinds of baboons, and they meet in this area and interbreed, but they're radically different, and not just in the way they look and the way they behave, but in their whole social structure. These desert baboons, the ones you see at the top with the white mane, have a very elaborate coordinated social system. They're very tight knit, and they collaborate. So whereas the other baboons, if you were to look at their baby wrong, maybe the mother would bark at you. But with these other troops, if you were to look at the baby wrong, the whole troop might attack you. So they're that much more collaborative and synchronized and coordinated in their activities. And what was interesting to me is that the one species, the desert hamadryas, had changed so fast. They split apart a million years ago, but the hamadryas has changed so fast relative to other baboons. And that was really interesting to me. What is it about their organization that allowed them to adapt to change so quickly? And now that's what I apply with all my work, that premise. So I actually ended up working for my husband and running his business for 10 years, raising children and all that stuff. And then I found biomimicry, and I just had to get back into that, into my passions around living systems. So I don't know how familiar you are with biomimicry, but it's innovation inspired by nature. The book was written by Janine Benyus in 1997. And basically, all of the living things that surround us today, including ourselves, are survivors. I mean, it's against all odds. We persisted and survived and adapted to change to become here in the present. So I like to say that because it gives me a lot of hope, because I know that we're proven survivors. Our strategies do work. We're not an evolutionary dead end necessarily. We got this far, and equally with all other species. So all these different strategies for making a living in the world are equally valid. They equally worked. And I think that opens our humility to seeing what other possibilities there are for addressing the problems that we have. Just to give you a little background on biomimicry and how that works, and what strikes me in it is this example was he is Jay Harmon. He's an Australian surfer, and he just spent a lot of time in the waves, and he noticed that energy and water are always moving like this. They don't go in a straight line. And he thought, well, how strange, because all of our machinery is designed on that premise that energy goes from here to there in the shortest possible way. But that's actually not how it works. It's a lot of vortices and things like that. So he was actually able to freeze a whirlpool and turned it into a fan and an impeller. And it turns out it's like 60, 80% more effective and quieter. So this is what I mean of just observing natural patterns, flows in the world, and designing in alignment with that instead of trying to control it, work with it, and surf for free in the way that other species do. This is another example. It's a software program that, the way that bird bones are so light and strong. So this software program is able to use those algorithms to design planes, automobiles, things like that for lightweight and strength. So these general patterns hold true. So at that point, I started writing this article. It was a regular column in a magazine, the Biomimicry Manual, and it was a success. I started talking all over the world about innovation. I worked with a lot of companies. It was wonderful. I was doing really exciting innovation work. How would nature solve this or that? But what I found is, I'm going to go here. What I found is that these companies, you could come up with these radical ideas that were real game changers, just really exciting things. The engineers and the designers would all be so excited. But a lot of times the ideas didn't go anywhere. And the only reason was the process and structure of the organizations themselves. They just simply were not designed to adapt to change. And being an evolutionary biologist and a population geneticist, that's one thing I do know is how organisms adapt to change. So I became very interested in that. What was the process and structure that these companies needed to adopt in order to adapt quickly? I'll go back up there. Oh yeah. Okay, and so here we are. We have these fantastic education, all the STEM and even STEAM with art. But I was struck just looking at these logos. I can't see one living thing in any of these logos. And that's just crazy to me, because to me, nothing makes sense except in light of evolution. If all of us and our living things and our living endeavors come from this one spark of life, how can we understand anything? And especially, how can we understand how to adapt to change if we don't even understand the nature of evolution and living things? I mean, to me, every endeavor we do is a biological one first. So nothing makes sense except in light of evolution. And how can we design for adaptability if we're blind to how it even occurs? So I went back to that question of how does nature adapt to change? And of course, we know living things grow and develop and learn, adapt and evolve at different scales throughout our lives and throughout evolutionary time. So I started thinking about what are the leverage points I can exert to affect what I perceive as the kind of the highest leverage point, honestly, is this paradigm shift between this mechanistic thinking and evolutionary thinking in design. I really see it as a process and structure problem in organizations. And I do think that's the highest leverage point, besides just paradigm shift, because we can, there's some big dominoes we could knock down that the employees and other people that working there would start to understand this process and the way to design. And I think things could actually change quickly with that. I think education and opportunity for women and girls is the second big leverage point. We know that for climate change and poverty, it's women and girls, getting them to the table and getting their voices heard. So I have endeavors for that. And then biocultural renewal and leadership, because I really feel, and you'll see in this, that humans have adapted to this planet. We have ways of making a living that are successful and really beautiful. And we've been severed from the land and the processes that we knew for taking care of the land and taking care of each other and the way our societies have evolved. So I do a lot of work on leadership cultivation for Indigenous youth, because we know 85% of the biodiversity on Earth is managed by 5% of the people, which are Indigenous people. So I think that's something that we need to connect with. And then there's also, for them, they've often been severed from their own knowledge and their own lands. So there's a lot of work to be done there. So I'll start with the first one, is that the education, just living systems education. So I think the biomimicry education in schools is super important. Just getting kids to understand that they are living things. The natural laws affect us all. And to start thinking it more empathically, like all these other animals and organisms are equal survivors. How did they do it? That's there, a little humility, a little curiosity, imagination. I think these are the things that we need in the future, because we don't even know what the future is going to look like. So how can we teach these kids the skills that they're going to need when we have no idea? So I think understanding the way life works and giving them those skills is more effective. Just in case you don't know about this, Biomimicry Global Design Challenge. This is really cool. This is for students worldwide, and they invite teams to solve problems the way nature would. And, like we've had a team of Egyptian girls won it 2 years ago, doing irrigation systems. I mean, it's really exciting, the things they're coming up with. It's a good source of hope. And so I think it's really important to get people out into the outdoors, and a lot of them, there's so much fear about bugs and and so I think that's a big factor, just getting people to just relax, learn to perceive, learn to see, and drop some of that fear, and then learning to see the way that life works. And I think that'll open a lot of doors for more alignment and more awareness in the way we design. So I absolutely believe this. I work with David Sloan Wilson a lot at the Evolution Institute, working on business courses for MBAs and all kinds of education initiatives. So here it comes down to it, is we've designed everything in this efficiency mindset, right? Like Lean Sigma 6. There is a best practice. There's a standard operating procedure. There's a most efficient choice. But in living systems, they have to select for resilience, because conditions are always changing. So efficiency works great if nothing ever changes, but that's just simply not the case. And so now we have a problem where we've designed all the diversity out of it, and we just don't have a lot of options on how to do that. So living things evolve and thrive, and machines gradually fall apart, even Volkswagens. So here's my leverage points. So that's that education piece. And now we go into the process and structure and organizations. And I think this is probably the meat of my work. My real contribution is applying to these population genetic observations on and using that to enhance the way that we innovate and organize and work together, collaborate. So going back to these baboons, we've got these hamadryas that evolved very quickly. And how is that that they did that? And I go back to this model. So these are these Daphnia water fleas. And in San Diego, we're this is where I live. It's hot. It's a desert. It's dry. But occasionally we get this big rains, and these little water fleas, their eggs are in the soil, in the dirt, for years sometimes. And then when those rains start, they go to work quickly. They have to work fast. So they start cloning themselves. They're all females, and they just eat as much as they can and clone more of themselves. But as soon as the water warms up and the oxygen goes down and the food starts to decline, they start making males and they switch to sex. So it's this, when conditions are changeable, you want more diversity, you want more experiments. It's a numbers game, right? So that's a basic premise that, here we've designed our systems on this clone model, this efficiency model, but this cross-fertilization and a little randomness, a little, this diversity is what we require. Diversity is the raw feedstock of adaptation. And I know you guys know this, but I come across this all the time, like just a very, very basic lack of evolutionary literacy. So I just start with, an organism that you think of, let's say a blue butterfly, the morpho butterfly. But just that in any species, there's so much diversity in it. It is not a uniform creature. And so when you're getting selection, organisms are choosing, there's selection going on, but things are always changing. So you get this, it kind of holds a body of diversity in the population, and you need that. You need that. So here's these these queen ants. So what they do, they go on this nuptial flight. So when the conditions are just perfect, they take to the air and they have a mating frenzy and go off and start new colonies. But these queens will keep mating until they mate with at least 6 males, because they need that much diversity to support the colony. Because if they were more clones, they would not have the diversity of possibilities, but also they compete more because they're closer in they overlap more. So you can see that over time, organisms become more different, more honed to their environment. And then when you go all the way, we get all these radically different kinds of organisms that work together and are exchanging energy and symbiosis, thriving ecosystems. And that's what we're after. So going back to humans now, because I'm an evolutionary biologist, but I'm also a bioanthropologist. So working on human evolution and human social evolution. So here we are, we split up from our closest relatives only 5 million years ago. And yet look how quickly we've changed, and we're really not recognizable as apes. The orangutans and gorillas and chimpanzees are recognizably apes to us, and we look quite different. And it's similar with those baboons, how we've evolved much faster, changed much faster relative. And that's because of our social structure. That's because of our collaborative, close-knit social structure. To the point where, if you look at this, some of these are human structures and some of them are ant or termite structures. But I am just struck by the appearance of intelligent design. The patterns are the same, and the reason is because humans are actually superorganisms, just like ants and honeybees. We operate on the same kinds of principles and patterns, and we do the same kinds of complex collective activities. And so what I've done is really looked for those parallels and tried to bring out those deep principles in the way that we organize our organizations to try to capitalize on those natural things that we have. So we are superorganism apes. It's just a very strange thing, but that's what we are. And E.O. Wilson would agree with that. We are diverse, genetically diverse, just like ants and honeybees are, but we are all autonomous. We all have our own agency and activities, and we're networked around a shared purpose. Like these ants and bees, they have one queen and they're trying to help her reproduce as much as possible for all of them. So they take on different jobs. They're good at different things. They have different skills, expertise, and they collectively, they have much greater capacity and things that they can do. It unlocks new skills for them. And that's how we are too. So what I did is I looked through the literature on all these different superorganisms, a wide range, and looked for the deep patterns that they all share. And then I thought about how they can apply to us and how we could get more conscious about deepening into them. So they all operate on collective intelligence, which is a very interesting thing. Here you can see the honeybees, like when they're trying to find a home, the scouts will go out in different directions and look, and they take quite a lot of time to evaluate the site. And if they like it, they'll come back to the hive and they'll do a little dance. They do this little figure 8 waggle dance. And that tells the other bees, there's a pretty good site. It's in that direction. It's about this far. It's about this good. And if another bee sees it and likes her dance, if it's vigorous enough, she'll go out and check it out for herself. So then she comes back and does a dance too. So you get this dance floor that's humming with all these different possibilities. And then at some point, there's a tipping threshold hit, and the whole hive will go and fly to that site. And bizarrely enough, it's almost always the best site. So this collective intelligence really is remarkably effective. But what's interesting to me is they never dance for a site they don't see. So this phenomenon of us sharing posts without ever reading them, they don't do that. And there's a plurality of possibilities, and it happens in a very nice self-organized way. The ants use similar kinds of what we call stigmergic signals, where they're actually manipulating the environment, and those clues left behind trigger other individuals to do things. So, they might drag their abdomen along the ground, and that makes a pheromone trail, and another ant comes across it, and they'll follow that trail to the food source. And so there's a lot of these kind of stigmergic indirect rules that superorganisms use, and we're no different. A game of chess, a game of ball, we have simple rules, we interact with them, and it's really powerfully emergent. So I think the systems, structures, and processes that we're operating in have a lot of work to be done on them. I think we're doing everything backwards. It's just designed in a machine-like way. It's not designed for living systems to adapt. So I think these are simple things to change, but really powerful. So the evolution AI that I've been developing is one of those things. It's living systems are open, and it's hard to make them into algorithms, but you can, and obviously the ants have done that. So this is my attempt to try to codify ant stigmergic behaviors into a program that would connect people and ideas, and leave stigmergic trails that can help people, and then also allow for diverse processes and structures to stay in the population, so that we don't have standard operating procedures and best practices. We have this diverse population of ideas that are competing, much in the way of the honeybees. And so with these kinds of principles, you see this incredible agility and resilience. I include the slime molds and the mycelial networks underground in my superorganism patterns, because many of them are genetically distinct, and they do share a purpose, and they do follow those patterns. I mean, these guys can find their way through a maze and they have no brain, no nervous system. It's remarkable. And so how do they accomplish that? So this collective intelligence is the way they make their living. And that requires reciprocity. They have to share things. So, maybe they share the nest building, they share the queen, so they share their reproductive abilities. They share, like the mycelium underground, they're sharing their cell walls, they're sharing the nutrients. And so that's what they do. But now, anytime that happens, when you have a collective resource you're managing, we know about the tragedy of the commons. And so you have to have a mechanism for preventing parasitism and sneaker strategies. And so all these superorganisms use distributed leadership mechanisms to kind of, they don't have a boss or a police, outsourcing it. They do it from within, they do it in a distributed way. So, and that's pretty interesting the way they do that. And the result is these complex adaptive outcomes, which are really remarkable. Like here in Botswana, there's these termite mounds are like 30 feet high, and they are opening and closing passageways throughout the day, which it keeps the whole colony to within 1 degree Celsius, with no, energy expenditure other than their individual movements through the day. But compare that to how expensive it is for us to do the things that they're already doing. Now, looking at how humans do this same thing, we knit our little modular teams together with leaders, distributed leadership. But also the really important feature of distributed leadership is to suppress dominance, because we've got chimpanzees are our cousins, and they have these alpha males, and they can pretty much dominate a resource and exclude others from it. But like the bonobos are equally related to us, our cousins. There too, the males would like to dominate if they can, but they can't, because any two females will make an alliance and shut it down. And so that's getting at that kind of distributed leadership where you can try to suppress dominance to achieve some kind of equitable, authentic diversity and agency, so that you can get that collective intelligence. So it's actually really important, and it's interesting the way that we do it. And I think the bonobo model is interesting because that's obviously within our genetic potential. So that brings up that education and opportunity for women and girls, because I think that's the it's a huge leverage point, but also it's an attainable one. So I have this bonobo revolution endeavor, which is a lot of fun, and we do that's Floppy Tit Flo and her badass biker bonobo gang. We have t-shirts and all that, but we do it for like women's marches and things like that. But a lot of the time what we're just talking about, just having conversations where we're trying to make space for other ideas and collective intelligence, other people that aren't normally heard from, because we're wasting so much potential. Hey, there's me. So that reciprocity that requires this belonging and fairness, that's so human. And we accomplish that through this distributed leadership. So I think any ways we can try to cultivate that in a conscious ways, I think that's really important. The last one is this regenerative value, and the superorganisms are really interesting how they do that. So like here, this is Botswana again, those termites. So what they're doing is they go out at night and they collect all the scraps of grass, and dead twigs and things that nobody else can use. And they chew it up and make it into a compost, which they fertilize their fungus gardens underground, and they actually live on the fruits of the fungus. But in the process of doing that, they are reclaiming these wasted resources, and converting them into new value that fertilizes the soil, it aerates the soil, their tunnels draw water down deeply, the grass grows greener, it draws more herbivores, and then it draws more carnivores. So it's this regenerative cycle of increasing vitality. And so that's a, and here's the ultimate, these mycelial networks underground are supporting 95% of the plants on Earth. And they're doing it by sharing their cell walls, sharing signals, sharing all this stuff, but they're gathering nutrients and water all over an extended patch of land and actually feeding the trees and helping the trees feed their seedlings. And so really this process of superorganism value is the foundation of value on our planet. And to me, that's really exciting because we are converging on that kind of a model with our internet. And it's easy to get depressed about all that, but there's also so much potential. Last, I wanted to just point out the human nature. Elephants, what they do is they're ecosystem engineers. So they are actually really destructive. They're going around and they're knocking trees down. And in the process of doing that, they're expanding the savannas that they like to live in. And that was instrumental in our spread out of Africa. So this is this ecosystem engineer, but humans go even further. We're meta ecosystem engineers. So we actually provoke creative disturbances that trigger cascades that increase diverse opportunities. That's the way we work. And so it's a very unusual niche that we have. And so I was going to say, like, for instance, with the milpa cycle in the Amazon, we have these ways of managing land that sometimes are tens of thousands of years old. And we know that the forests in the Amazon are anthropogenic gardens. And so that's my next thing, is really restoring or trying to reclaim some of this biocultural renewal, the ways we know about taking care of the land, and triggering these cascading diversifications. I think that's exciting. So I've got this idea. Well, this isn't my idea. This is that Thomas and Thomas Hirschman. They have the same name, completely coincidental, but they have this mostbeautifulever.com, which is this Artland Trust idea that we're prototyping at the Borrego Institute, where I work. So we're, it kind of builds on this NFT craze, the non-fungible tokens, which are carbon nightmares, but there's really no reason they have to be. We could have it based on a non-carbon coin, or we can have it based on local coins or other things like that. But the idea is to provide, to attach the diversifications of elders and artisans and artists attached to that land, that piece of land. So to regenerate biocultural renewal. Because right now, those elders and those people that have that knowledge, it's very hard for them to make a living doing that. It's just something that we don't value. So if could be a way to attach that knowledge to the land and generate value for it, I think it's exciting. It's just one idea. And you're welcome to go to that site and check it out. So this is that biocultural leadership piece. And I am the Dean of Biocultural Leadership for Geoversity in Panama, which is amazing because this land is managed by the Indigenous people. And they welcome us to come through there, and they show us how to make dyes and weave and all this great stuff. So what we've been doing is taking Indigenous youth leaders to Panama and cultivating their leadership skills, and also letting them see what it's like, a land managed by Indigenous people. And it's very moving and exciting, and I have a lot of hope for that. It's really been moving to see that. So I think that's really important. So just to reiterate, like, here's my big things, like this visceral experience of living processes and patterns. I think we need to have far more living systems education. I think that could be done through biomimicry, which is enchanting and fun. And I think it can be done just by getting outside and getting more experience. So I aim to provide that at Geoversity and at the Brago Institute, and everything I do. You know, I just want to get people to lower their fear level and to open their eyes, and to learn how to see. I think that's really important. So I welcome artists a lot. A lot of this is trying to bring in art and other ways of seeing. And the second thing is that human niche of just our human nature, like what we really are, because we've designed everything for some imaginary creature that isn't us. Here's the bill, the Brago Institute. That's my home. There's no people there. We do have a sheep of Borrego, bighorn sheep, which when I was a kid, there was only 150 left in the world, but they live here in this canyon. So 86 acres. It's amazing. It's it was a Native American village that was abandoned in 1910. So there's cultural artifacts everywhere. It's just amazing. There it is, more beautiful place. It's just really wild. And our bighorns. So we're going to do creative residencies where you can come and stay and you can work on a book you're working on or learn a new skill or music, whatever it is you're working on. And everybody there is interesting. So you get that cross fertilization and you also get this inspiration. So we do have, we have tents and we also have indoors, whatever you need, we can take care of you. Here's this transcontinental journeys we're doing in Panama for Indigenous youth, where they actually cross the continent on their own human power. It's really moving. This is the School for Biocultural Leadership. So if any of you have like gap year students, or if you're tapped in with Indigenous youth groups, send them our way, because I think it's a really powerful program. And oh yeah, that's Panama. That's the Kuna people that manage this land, and this is some of their artwork that they do. Indigenous youth, I've just been really impressed by the way they've gone to bat for our planet, and I'd like to support that. And just that we all have this Indigenous soul, I think, in us. You know, we're all craving that more connection to the land and to one another and our human nature. And I think that that's the challenge, the modern challenge for us, to kind of come home again, to bring about a natural renaissance. We just opened a Patreon. I'm really excited about this. So I've been supporting this on my own for almost a decade now. So, but I just started this Patreon, so you can support what we do for only $15 a month, and it gives you access to all the stuff we've created, which is a lot. I mean, all the way down. And then you get to participate in everything we're doing. You get 30% discount on to come and stay. We're going to do a lot of like teachings and also storytellings. We have a lot of Indigenous storytellers that are really amazing. So that's a fun thing to do. A lot of it'll be virtual as well. Then you can also sign up for our newsletter, which is at teaminnovationgroup.com. And then and then you can also check out all our offerings at that website if you like. And I think that's all I got. So if you guys want to ask some questions, I am all ears. Get the process right. Oh yes, we got, and I've got, these are the 2 books that are coming out most recently. And we'd love to see you at the build. We also love to see you in Panama. Thank you. If I can get out of the out of the sharing. All right. Oh, well, Carrie. Okay, this is begging the question of neurodiversity and non-normative perception provided by autistics. All three of my children have special needs, and two of them are autistic. So that's something I think about a lot, and it's frustrating to me because I feel like we're wasting so much potential. I mean, everything is you compete for a grade, you compete for a promotion, but that's really just competing to fulfill X. So you get what you just get that thing. You don't get the diversity of possibilities. That's the way that evolution actually works. So yeah, I agree with you on that. How do we reserve time to stay at the Institute? Oh, Valerie, hi, how are you? You can, I just set up a hip camp, to be honest, this morning. So it's open, and I do actually have a link. You know what I'll do? I'll just send out an email with all of that stuff in it. But yeah, it is open and it is ready to be reserved. Of course, it's a little hot. It was 122 yesterday. So we'll open in October 15th. Anything else? Well, it's been a real pleasure. You are welcome to email me anytime with any questions. I'm at Dr. Tamsin at drtamsin.com. Oh, when will the books be published? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm on a crazy publication schedule, and Krista's got the whip. So I've got the Teeming Transformation I just finished the third draft, and I'm supposed to have the final draft by July 20th, and then we'll try to get it published by October. But that said, members and like the Patreon members will get this while it is created, so you'll get it earlier. You can, I mean, I want to bounce things off the members and stuff like that. So yes, and then we have another one. The Underneath is coming out probably closer to December. The Mycelial Way is getting redone. Teeming second edition, because that one's sold out. So that one's only available on the audiobook right now. And the Tangled Bank, Letters from the Tangled Bank. We're going to put out a new edition of that. Yeah. So yes, I'm supposed to have them all done by the end of the year. Just like that. Anything else? Okay. Well, it's been a real pleasure. Please reach out, say hi, any questions. I don't mind that at all. And now Krista's keeping me on the straight and narrow for conversations. So I would love to talk to you all. All right, take care. Have a great weekend, and thank you so much for joining me. Share the good word. Cheers. Thanks.